There are moments in life where time doesn't slow down, it just stops. It happened to me in the middle of a room filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the distant hum of a live jazz band at the Sheraton Ballroom in downtown Denver. The law firm Tracy worked for was hosting their annual winter gala, a black-tie affair full of people who shook hands for a living and smiled like it was their job. I was there too, not by her side, but across the room. I'd been invited separately through a subcontracting firm that handled part of their digital litigation software. We'd arrived in different cars. I wasn't even sure she'd known I was coming. I had just refilled my drink when my phone buzzed. Group message. I glanced at the screen without thinking, half expecting some company memo or a message from one of my guys checking in about next week's project. Instead, I saw Tracy's name at the top of a message followed by a group photo. My first reaction wasn't suspicion, it was curiosity. I opened the image, expecting to see her with her usual crew, Danielle, the sharp-tongued associate who always had a wine glass in hand, Jordan, the tall paralegal with a laugh that echoed across every room. But my eyes locked onto something else. Something wrong. Tracy was in the center of the photo, dressed in a sleek, silver gown that clung to her in all the right places. Her makeup was perfect, her smile dazzling. But it was the man standing beside her that made my chest tighten. He was handsome, confident, probably mid-30s like us, but with that polished arrogance only certain men seemed to perfect. His hand was wrapped around her waist. Not resting, not hovering, gripping. His thumb was tucked slightly forward, pressing against her dress in a way that made it clear this wasn't just friendly contact. And her body leaned into his, shoulder to shoulder, her head tilted ever so slightly toward him. Their faces were closer than they should have been. Too familiar. Too in asterisk, mate. Something primal stirred in my gut. My brain immediately tried to rationalize coworkers can be close, maybe it was just the angle, maybe the hand slipped during the sh*t, but my instincts were screaming. And they'd been quiet for a long time. Until now. I looked up across the ballroom. She was maybe 30 feet away, standing in a circle of people laughing at something someone had said. Not the man from the photo, he was nowhere in sight, but she looked relaxed, confident. I watched her sip her drink and toss her head back with a practiced kind of charm. That same charm that used to be mine alone. I stared down at my phone again, the image burned into my eyes like a flare. I noticed something else. She had sent the photo to her work friends, not to me. I was only copied because she probably forgot I was on the group chat where they scheduled their fantasy football league matchups. An accidental inclusion. My heart pounded as I stepped out into the hotel hallway, needing air. My hands were shaking slightly and I didn't know if it was anger or fear or something worse. A part of me wanted to believe I was overreacting. But another part, the part that had quietly been whispering to me for months, knew better. Later that night, when we were back home, I brought it up. Carefully, cautiously. Hey, I said, holding up my phone. I saw the picture you sent. Who's the guy with you? She didn't even glance at the screen. Oh, that? Just a coworker. He's one of the newer partners. Why? I turned the screen toward her. His hand was on your waist. She looked. Just a glance. Then rolled her eyes and turned away. Oh my God, Noah. It's a photo. You're seriously doing this right now. Doing what? I said, my voice quieter than I expected. Asking why my wife is cuddled up with another man at a party I was also invited to? She stood up abruptly, dropping her purse onto the entry table. This is so typical. You see one thing out of context and suddenly it's an affair. You know how many pictures get taken at these things? I don't control where people put their hands, Noah. You didn't seem to mind. She spun around. Excuse me. In the picture. You didn't look uncomfortable. She scoffed. Right? Because I should have thrown a fit in front of clients over a hand on my waist. God, grow up. The cold way she said it, it didn't just sting. It burned. There was no guilt. No attempt at understanding why this bothered me. Just instant defense. Offense, really? Like I was the problem here. I just want to know, I said more quietly now, if there's something going on I should be aware of. She didn't hesitate. There's not. And frankly, the fact that you even have to ask makes me wonder what you've been doing behind my back. There it was. The deflection. The turning of the tables. I said nothing. Just stood there, phone still in hand, while she disappeared into the bedroom. A minute later, I heard the shower running. I didn't follow her. Didn't press it. I just sat down on the edge of the couch and stared at the same image again. Studied it. Noticed every little thing I'd missed the first time. The smirk on his face. The way her left hand had drifted slightly toward his torso. The slight turn of her hip. It wasn't just a photo. It was a line that had already been crossed. There are moments in life where time doesn't slow down, it just stops. It happened to me in the middle of a room filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the distant hum of a live jazz band at the Sheraton Ballroom in downtown Denver. The law firm Tracy worked for was hosting their annual winter gala, a black-tie affair full of people who shook hands for a living and smiled like it was their job. I was there too, not by her side, but across the room. I'd been invited separately through a subcontracting firm that handled part of their digital litigation software. We'd arrived in different cars. I wasn't even sure she'd known I was coming. I had just refilled my drink when my phone buzzed. Group message. I glanced at the screen without thinking, half expecting some company memo or a message from one of my guys checking in about next week's project. Instead, I saw Tracy's name at the top of a message followed by a group photo. My first reaction wasn't suspicion, it was curiosity. I opened the image, expecting to see her with her usual crew, Danielle, the sharp-tongued associate who always had a wine glass in hand, Jordan, the tall paralegal with a laugh that echoed across every room. But my eyes locked onto something else. Something wrong. Tracy was in the center of the photo, dressed in a sleek, silver gown that clung to her in all the right places. Her makeup was perfect, her smile dazzling. But it was the man standing beside her that made my chest tighten. He was handsome, confident, probably mid-30s like us, but with that polished arrogance only certain men seemed to perfect. His hand was wrapped around her waist. Not resting, not hovering, gripping. His thumb was tucked slightly forward, pressing against her dress in a way that made it clear this wasn't just friendly contact. And her body leaned into his, shoulder to shoulder, her head tilted ever so slightly toward him. Their faces were closer than they should have been. Too familiar. Too an asterisk, mate. Something primal stirred in my gut. My brain immediately tried to rationalize coworkers can be close, maybe it was just the angle, maybe the hand slipped during the sh*t, but my instincts were screaming. And they'd been quiet for a long time. Until now. I looked up across the ballroom. She was maybe 30 feet away, standing in a circle of people laughing at something someone had said. Not the man from the photo, he was nowhere in sight, but she looked relaxed, confident. I watched her sip her drink and toss her head back with a practiced kind of charm. That same charm that used to be mine alone. I stared down at my phone again, the image burned into my eyes like a flare. I noticed something else. She had sent the photo to her work friends, not to me. I was only copied because she probably forgot I was on the group chat where they scheduled their fantasy football league matchups. An accidental inclusion. My heart pounded as I stepped out into the hotel hallway, needing air. My hands were shaking slightly and I didn't know if it was anger or fear or something worse. A part of me wanted to believe I was overreacting. But another part, the part that had quietly been whispering to me for months, knew better. Later that night, when we were back home, I brought it up. Carefully, cautiously. "Hey," I said, holding up my phone. "I saw the picture you sent. Who's the guy with you?" She didn't even glance at the screen. "Oh, that? Just a coworker. He's one of the newer partners." "Why?" I turned the screen toward her. "His hand was on your waist." She looked. Just a glance. Then rolled her eyes and turned away. "Oh my God, Noah. It's a photo. You're seriously doing this right now." "Doing what?" I said, my voice quieter than I expected. "Asking why my wife is cuddled up with another man at a party I was also invited to?" She stood up abruptly, dropping her purse onto the entry table. "This is so typical. You see one thing out of context and suddenly it's an affair. You know how many pictures get taken at these things? I don't control where people put their hands, Noah. You didn't seem to mind." She spun around. "Excuse me. In the picture. You didn't look uncomfortable." She scoffed. "Right? Because I should have thrown a fit in front of clients over a hand on my waist." "God, grow up." The cold way she said it, it didn't just sting. It burned. There was no guilt. No attempt at understanding why this bothered me. Just instant defense. Offense, really? Like I was the problem here. "I just want to know," I said more quietly now, "if there's something going on I should be aware of." She didn't hesitate. "There's not. And frankly, the fact that you even have to ask makes me wonder what you've been doing behind my back." There it was. The deflection. The turning of the tables. I said nothing. Just stood there, phone still in hand, while she disappeared into the bedroom. A minute later, I heard the shower running. I didn't follow her. Didn't press it. I just sat down on the edge of the couch and stared at the same image again. Studied it. Noticed every little thing I'd missed the first time. The smirk on his face. The way her left hand had drifted slightly toward his torso. The slight turn of her hip. It wasn't just a photo. It was a line that had already been crossed. The days after the party blurred together in this low hum of unease. Tracy acted like nothing happened. She still kissed me on the cheek in the morning, still talked about deadlines and client lunches and gym classes. But something fundamental had shifted inside me. That photo opened a door I hadn't wanted to walk through. Now I couldn't stop looking through it. I didn't confront her again. At least not directly. But I started paying attention in a way I hadn't before. Every little thing she did became a thread, and I began tugging. First, it was the late meetings. I'd always taken her at her word. She worked at a high-powered firm, it made sense. But now I was noticing things. How she'd say she was with a client uptown, but the GPS location she once accidentally shared showed her in the opposite direction. How she started staying out later, sometimes not getting home until after midnight, claiming networking drinks went long. Then came the passwords. She'd changed them all: her phone, her laptop, even our shared Netflix account. When I asked why, she said there was a data breach at the firm. Reasonable enough, until I noticed she started turning her screen away when I walked by, even if she was just texting. And the gym. God, the gym. Tracy used to hate the gym. She once told me she didn't trust people who enjoyed running. But now she was obsessed. For sometimes 5 times a week. She'd come back drenched, flushed, energized. It wasn't just fitness. It was escape. Sometimes she'd come back with her hair slightly damp but her makeup freshly applied. Sometimes she didn't look like she'd worked out at all. The worst part? I didn't say anything. Not out of cowardice, at least that's what I told myself, but because I was trying to collect the full picture. I didn't want to accuse her without proof. I didn't want to be wrong. Or maybe I did, because that would mean we were still okay. But we weren't okay. We hadn't been for a long time. Looking back, I realized I'd felt it months ago. That subtle disconnection, like we were living parallel lives under the same roof. Conversations became functional. Dinners became separate. S*X became non-existent. She was always too tired, too stressed, too distracted. I told myself we were just going through a rough patch. I remembered one morning, maybe a month before the party. I reached over to touch her hip in bed. A soft, wordless gesture. She flinched. Not violently, just enough. She said she had a cramp, rolled over, and went back to sleep. I stared at the ceiling for an hour afterward, wondering if it was something I'd done. Now I knew it wasn't about me. Not really. Even the way she looked changed. She started dressing differently. Tighter clothes, bolder lipstick. Her hair was styled more often. She used to complain about the time it took to do all that. Now it was like a ritual. She said she was doing it for herself, and maybe that was true. But something told me otherwise. The change was gradual, but the pattern was clear. She was pulling away from me and toward something else. Someone else. I started checking our shared calendar. She had a recurring client check-in every Wednesday afternoon that didn't appear on her firm's published docket. I knew this because I'd looked up the internal events calendar on her firm's website. Something I never thought I'd do. But I was becoming someone else, too. Someone suspicious. Someone angry. And then there were the receipts. One night, she came home late again. I'd already eaten dinner alone. Something that was becoming a routine. She was talking fast, distracted, saying something about her Uber driver getting lost. She dropped her purse by the door and headed straight for the shower. After the water started running, I glanced down and saw her wallet half spilled on the floor. I didn't plan to snoop. Not at first. But when I bent down to help clean it up, something fluttered out. A crumpled receipt. From a steakhouse I'd never heard of. Dated for that very evening. 2 entrees. 2 cocktails. A bottle of wine. I stood there, staring at it, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. My hands started to tremble. I wanted to believe there was an explanation. A client dinner, maybe, but it didn't make sense. She'd said she was at a client's office all night. This place was 10 miles in the opposite direction. When she got out of the shower, towel wrapped around her, hair dripping, she smiled like nothing was wrong. Long day, she said, rubbing her temples. I need to sleep. I didn't say a word. I just nodded. But inside, something calcified. I started documenting everything. Notes on my phone. Screensh*TS. Photos of receipts. Times, dates, locations. I wasn't sure what I was building. I just knew I needed to hold onto something solid, something I could point to when it all finally broke open. Because it was going to break open. That much was clear. The worst part of it all wasn't the lies or even the emotional distance. It was the way she reacted when I tried to reach her. When I asked simple questions, how was your day? Or where were you tonight? Her face would cloud with irritation. Like I was being unreasonable for showing interest in her life. She'd answer with clipped tones, sometimes even laugh dismissively like I was a child asking too many questions. One night, I asked her to have dinner with me, just the two of us. No distractions, no phones. She said she had plans. When I pressed, she snapped. Why are you being so clingy lately? Clingy. From the woman who used to ask me to stay on the phone with her during late drives home just because she liked hearing my voice. From the woman who used to send me texts midday saying she missed me. That woman was gone. I kept telling myself I needed clarity. But deep down, I think I was hoping for something worse. Not because I wanted to be right, but because I needed it to be real. I needed a reason to walk away that wasn't just a slow, invisible erosion. I needed proof of betrayal. I needed betrayal to hurt more than the emptiness. And maybe, in some messed up way, I wanted to stop feeling crazy. Because that's what it does to you, this kind of silence, this kind of distance. It makes you question your own reality. You start wondering if you're the one who changed, if you're the problem, if maybe you're just imagining the shift. But I wasn't imagining it. Not anymore. The pieces were lining up like puzzle fragments that had been under my nose the whole time. The late nights. The defensiveness. The gym obsession. The way she avoided eye contact when she lied. The new underwear I found in the laundry that she'd never worn for me. The half-finished bottle of wine in the kitchen opened on a night she said she was at a meeting. She was somewhere else physically, emotionally, spiritually. And I was standing outside the circle watching her live a life that didn't include me. The photo had been the spark. But what came after, that was the fire. There's a kind of silence that doesn't comfort, it weighs. That's what our house felt like now. Not a quiet refuge, but a muted battleground. Every clink of silverware, every distant door creak, every too loud breath magnified. Tracy and I coexisted like strangers who'd once been lovers, tiptoeing around one another, pretending nothing had changed, though everything had. Still, I didn't confront her. Not because I was scared. Because I was waiting. I needed clarity, not the kind that came from feelings, but the kind you can't explain away. A truth so clear it doesn't leave room for denial. That clarity came on a Thursday. I was supposed to be out of town. A tech conference in Salt Lake City, 3 days, 2 nights. I told her about it weeks in advance. She didn't even pretend to be disappointed. The plan had been to fly out early Thursday morning. But at the last minute, the project lead canceled our panel. I didn't tell Tracy. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to see what she'd do, or maybe some part of me was just tired of giving her the benefit of the doubt. So I came home. It was just after 6 p.m. when I pulled into our driveway. The sun hadn't fully set yet, but the house was lit. All the lights in the kitchen were on. That was strange in itself. Tracy hated wasting electricity. I sat in my car for a second, hand on the key, heart pounding like I was about to break into someone else's life. I didn't even close the door behind me when I entered. I moved slowly, quietly. That's when I heard it. Laughter. Not just hers. A man's too. Low, familiar. Comfortable. It came from the kitchen. I paused just before the hallway that opened up to it. My hand gripped the edge of the wall as I leaned slightly forward, just enough to see without being seen. And there they were. Tracy stood barefoot in the kitchen, wine glass in hand, laughing at something he'd just said. His suit jacket off, shirt sleeves rolled to the elbows, was sitting at the island like he'd been there 100 times before. His hand rested near hers. There was a second wine glass, half full. An open bottle. And on the back of the chair his jacket. I didn't recognize him immediately. Maybe I didn't want to. But the shape of his jaw, the way he laughed, the way her body leaned slightly toward his, it all clicked. It was him, the man from the photo. And for a second I thought I might throw up. I didn't say anything, didn't yell or storm in. I didn't want confrontation. I didn't need words. I needed proof. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I took out my phone. Quietly, steadily. I held it just above the edge of the hallway, angled it through the narrow crack between the doorframe and the wall, and snapped a photo. Click. Just like that, it was done. I had it. Then I turned around and left. No door slamming. No dramatic exit. I just walked back to my car, slid into the seat, and sat there, gripping the steering wheel, breath shallow. You know how people say you never know how you'll react in moments like that? They're right. I always pictured myself losing it, screaming, demanding answers. But instead, I felt nothing. Just a numb sort of weight like my chest had been hollowed out. I drove for a while, not really going anywhere. Just putting distance between myself and the image of my wife laughing with another man in the kitchen we remodeled together. Eventually, I ended up in a park. Sat on a bench, phone in hand, looking at the photo. There was no ambiguity, no guesswork. It was clear. The int asterisk Macy, the familiarity, the ease, it wasn't new. This wasn't a one-time slip or an awkward moment with a coworker. This was practiced. This was a routine. And I hadn't been part of her routine for a long time. I must have stared at that picture for an hour. Not because I needed to convince myself of what I saw, but because some part of me couldn't believe how normal they looked. Like it was just another Thursday. Like I was the stranger. The funny thing is, the betrayal didn't sting the way I expected. It wasn't fire, it was frost. Cold. Icy. I realized I'd been grieving this relationship for months. Maybe even a year. The infidelity wasn't the beginning of the end. It was just the moment I let myself stop pretending. When I got home later that night, the lights were off. Her car was still in the driveway, but everything was dark. I went inside. Quietly. She must have gone to bed. There were 2 wine glasses in the sink. No jacket in sight. No sign of him at all. She cleaned up like she always did. Erased the evidence. But not enough. I walked into the living room, stood there for a while, and looked around like I was seeing it for the first time. The framed wedding photo. The bookshelf we built together. The rug she picked out from that overpriced boutique on 6th. Then I sat down and emailed the photo to myself. And saved it. Not because I needed it to hurt her, but because I needed it to stop gaslighting myself. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. Made coffee. Scrolled through her phone. Said she missed me last night and asked how the trip was going. I lied. Told her the panel went great. She smiled and kissed my cheek. I smiled back. And that was the moment I knew we were done. Not loud, not messy. Just done. Because when someone can lie to your face with that much ease, with that much practiced warmth, they're not the person you thought they were. And when you stop reacting, when you stop needing them to admit it, that's when you've already let go. She left for work around 8:30. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the grain of the wood, tracing it with my finger. Then I opened my laptop and started planning what came next. After I saw the truth, I didn't fall apart. I didn't scream, didn't throw anything, didn't confront Tracy with the photo or demand a confession. No threats, no begging, no fight. I simply stopped. Stopped pretending. Stopped hoping. Stopped playing the part of the clueless husband she could dance around without consequence. And then I started planning. The first step was regaining control. Not over her, but over myself, over the life we had built, the things we shared, the power I'd slowly handed away over the years because I'd believed we were a team. That illusion had been shattered. So I moved in silence. I started with the bank accounts. We had 2 joint checking accounts, 1 business, 1 personal. I rerouted my income into a separate account under my name only. Quietly. No notifications. Then, I removed her name from every credit card I had opened in my own name, cutting off any unauthorized lines of credit that might have been floating beneath the surface. She didn't notice. Not immediately. The second step was our business. We had started a small design consultancy together 5 years ago. Mostly digital strategy and branding for corporate clients. Tracy had slowly drifted out of the day-to-day, but her name was still on the LLC. I made a few calls, spoke to a lawyer I trusted, then retained full voting rights and executive power under a clause we'd agreed to when we started the company, one I had nearly forgotten existed. From that moment forward, every dollar that passed through that company was traceable, every invoice, every expense, every receipt. And it didn't take long for strange patterns to emerge. Payments made to names I didn't recognize. Consulting fees that led to personal Venmo accounts. Travel expenses that lined up with weekends she claimed to be visiting her parents. A $2,000 Airbnb bill in the middle of a month she swore she was at a conference. It wasn't just cheating. It was stealing. She was siphoning money out of the business we built together and rerouting it into a life that didn't include me. So I hired a forensic accountant. Not some generic CPA, I'm talking about a man who'd worked on corporate fraud cases so complex they made the news. I gave him everything. Access to the business records, credit card statements, bank files, and even a few old backups from Tracy's laptop. He didn't say much the first time we met. Just nodded slowly, scribbled something in a notebook, and promised me clarity within a few weeks. While he worked, I maintained the facade. At home, I was calm. I still cooked on Tuesdays, still folded laundry, still asked about her day. It was a performance and she bought it completely. Thought she'd gotten away with it. She would disappear for evenings and weekends without giving me more than a vague explanation, and when she returned, I smiled and asked how it went. The colder I got, the more relaxed she became. She thought I didn't care anymore. And in a way, she was right. I didn't care about her excuses. I cared about getting my life back intact. Meanwhile, she was everywhere, posting Instagram stories from restaurants she swore were business meetings, laughing with colleagues in photos where he was always nearby, always in frame. It was so casual, so practiced. They didn't even bother hiding it from the rest of the world. Just from me. But I wasn't watching through the eyes of a betrayed husband anymore. I was collecting evidence. One night, she posted a boomerang of 2 champagne glasses clinking together on a rooftop bar in Lodo. Caption, celebrating something big, clinking glasses. I *****ed it. 3 days later, she couldn't make it to a client meeting she was supposed to lead. Cancelled last minute, said she was sick. That same afternoon, the company card was charged at a spa 2 towns over. Full treatment package. Couples massage. *****ed that too. At this point, my drive wasn't revenge. It was surgical. Clinical. I wanted every detail, every crack in the story, every lie documented. I had started sleeping in the guest room weeks ago. Told her I was snoring too loudly. She laughed and rolled her eyes. Didn't question it. Didn't miss me. Good. Because every night, while she dozed off in our king-sized bed, I sat at the desk in the guest room, organizing files, receipts, call logs, and photos. I built folders. Labeled them. Created timelines. Every time I opened a new document, a little more of her story unraveled. But even then, I wasn't satisfied. I wanted to know what he meant to her. So I installed keylogger software on the office computer she rarely used but never logged out of. It was legal. It was mine. And soon, it gave me access to an email trail that confirmed what I'd already suspected. She wasn't just sleeping with him. They were planning something. In an email dated 2 weeks before the Denver party, he wrote, "Once we pull the rest of that cash out, you'll have what you need. Just let the firm think it's an investment account. They won't dig. Then we can finally make the move." She replied, "I'll make sure Noah doesn't see it coming. He's not even looking. If he wanted to know, he would have asked by now." That line stuck with me. He's not even looking. Except I was. I had been, silently, every day. From there, the tone of their emails shifted. They weren't just covering up, they were strategizing. Coordinating withdrawals, faking expenses, even discussing how to handle the split. He used business language like it was a merger. Cold. Calculated. Heartless. But she didn't push back. She encouraged it. At some point, she had stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as an obstacle. So I became a mirror. Reflective. Unreadable. Until it was time to break the illusion. One morning, I got a call from the forensic accountant. His voice was calm but serious. "I've got everything you asked for. And some things you didn't. You'll want to come in." When I sat down in his office, he pushed a thick folder across the desk. Dozens of flagged transactions, falsified expense reports, vendor payments to shell accounts traced back to him. There were spreadsheets, timelines, and copies of signed approvals that I recognized immediately. My name wasn't on any of them. Hers was. "I can present this in court," he said. "Clean case. Fraud, embezzlement, misuse of funds. You'll walk out with the company, the assets, and whatever else you asked for." I nodded slowly, fingers tightening around the edge of the folder. Tracy had been so busy living her new life that she forgot one important detail. I still held the foundation of the old one. From that point on, it was just a matter of timing. I didn't speak a word of it to her. I waited. Let her keep dancing through her new world, oblivious. She thought silence meant surrender. It didn't. It meant I was building the exit strategy. And when I left, I'd be taking everything with me. Courtrooms are strange places. Sterile, echoing, indifferent to the personal wreckage playing out inside them. You sit there in a suit listening to lawyers speak about your life like it's a budget proposal or a real estate dispute. Your entire history reduced to exhibits and itemized breakdowns. It's clinical. Emotionless. But under the surface, it's war. Tracy arrived 30 minutes late to the property hearing. She walked in like she was walking a red carpet, head high, lipstick flawless, phone still in her hand. Her lawyer, a tall woman with sharp eyes and a sharper suit, followed behind her, whispering something urgent. Tracy didn't seem to care. I was already seated, my file resting on the table in front of me like a loaded P***N. I didn't look at Tracy when she entered. I didn't have to. I could feel the heat of her presence, nervous, self-assured, reckless all at once. She thought this was routine. She thought I'd roll over. She thought the silence meant surrender. She had no idea what was about to hit her. The judge, an older man with a calm but commanding voice, opened the session by reading the basics. Length of marriage, assets in dispute, business holdings, real property. It was dry, procedural, meant to establish context. Then Tracy's lawyer spoke first. She laid out what I expected, a narrative of contribution. Tracy had helped start the business, she had given up her own time to support our growth, she was entitled to half of everything, if not more, given the emotional labor she'd endured. I didn't flinch. When the judge asked if we had any counter-evidence to submit, my attorney stood. Your Honor, he said, calm as ice, we'd like to introduce this into the record. He handed the judge a folder. Inside, over 70 pages of financial data, email logs, expense reports, and sworn testimony from the forensic accountant. Every transaction traced. Every misuse of company funds documented and timestamped. It started quiet. The judge flipped through the pages, eyes narrowing slightly. Then he paused, turned back a few pages, looked at Tracy. Mrs. Callahan, he said, setting the papers down. Do you recognize the name Stanton B. Klein? She hesitated. No. Interesting, he said. Because Mr. Klein received 6 separate payments from your company account over the course of 8 months, totaling approximately $31,000. Each labeled under consulting services. She blinked. Her lawyer shifted. The judge continued. We've since verified that Mr. Klein is not a licensed consultant. In fact, he's a real estate attorney based in Boulder. And these payments, along with several others, were routed through accounts you had exclusive access to. My attorney stood again. We also have evidence showing Mrs. Callahan used company funds to finance a personal apartment under a third-party lease, along with purchases including luxury jewelry, airfare, spa treatments, and meals, none of which were disclosed to Mr. Callahan or relevant to business operations. Tracy's lawyer stood abruptly. Your Honor, we request a recess to review this material. Denied, the judge said immediately. This hearing is about equitable division. If your client has misrepresented financials, it affects the entire framework of this case. Then he looked back at Tracy. Do you have an explanation? She didn't. Her lips parted like she might say something, but no sound came out. Just that deer-in-the-headlights stare. For the first time in months, she looked shaken. Her lawyer leaned over and whispered furiously. Tracy swallowed hard and said those expenses were complicated. Some of them were work-related. You falsified documentation, the judge interrupted. We'll be referring this for a forensic audit. Until that's complete, I'm issuing a temporary freeze on all of your accounts and assets, including access to the joint business. The room went silent. No whispering. No rustling papers. Just stillness. I glanced at her then. Finally. And in that moment I saw it. The mask slipping. Her face drained of color. Her hands clenched, resting against the polished wood of the table. She wasn't prepared for this. She thought she held all the cards. But she didn't realize I'd been rebuilding the deck. When court recessed for a break, Tracy followed me into the hallway. Not alone. Her attorney flanked her like a human shield, but close enough to speak. Noah, she said, her voice low. Can we talk? Just us. I turned to her, expression flat. Now you want to talk? I didn't know you were going to do all this. All this, I repeated. You mean prove that you were robbing our company blind while planning your exit with another man? Her face flinched, just slightly, but it was there. It wasn't like that. You're right, I said. It was worse. Her lawyer stepped in then, pulling her aside. I walked away. Back in the courtroom, the final blow came with the judge's summary. Due to the nature of the financial discrepancies, a temporary trustee would be appointed to manage the business until a forensic review was complete. All major assets would be held in escrow. Tracy's access to funds would be suspended. And pending results of the audit, criminal charges could be explored. Her attorney looked like she wanted to melt into the floor. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just listened. When the judge adjourned, I stood up, shook my lawyer's hand, and walked out without looking back. But before I reached the elevator, I heard her voice again. "Noah, please." I turned. She stood alone this time. No lawyer, no confidence, just panic. "Why are you doing this?" I looked at her for a long moment. "You broke us," I said. "I'm just documenting the wreckage." She blinked hard, eyes wet but unspilled. "You didn't have to humiliate me, Tracy," I said calmly. "You did that yourself." Then I stepped into the elevator and let the doors close. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. I pulled my coat tighter and walked to my car. My phone buzzed. A text from my attorney. "Solid first win. We'll keep the pressure on." I didn't reply. I just sat there watching people come and go from the courthouse. And for the first time in a long time, I felt still. Not happy, not triumphant, just still. Like I was finally out of the storm. And now it was her turn to stand in the rain. If Tracy thought the courtroom was the peak of her unraveling, she didn't understand how deep the thread went. Her lover, Mr. Charismatic, Mr. Consultant, wasn't just a man she cheated with. He was a participant, maybe even a co-conspirator. The forensic audit uncovered his name buried in transaction records, hidden behind vague descriptors, strategy sessions, external counsel, market research. Thousands of dollars routed to an account tied directly to him. The same account he used to pay his credit card bills and fund his lifestyle. When the final report dropped, my attorney didn't just submit it to the court. He leaked a sanitized version to the firm's internal review board, the same law firm that had sponsored his partnership and promoted him just 6 months earlier. The fallout was immediate. By the end of the week, he was placed on indefinite leave pending investigation. His name was stripped from the firm's website. Internal emails circulated. Clients were notified. Within days, the man who once bragged about